Imagine living in a place where the sun disappears from the sky for almost 6 months. It's not a rare phenomenon, nor an exception. It's the reality that just over 3,000 people face every year, living among icy mountains, in a city where the light simply doesn't come. The biological clock goes crazy, the mood changes, the routine changes. But even so, people are still there, going to work, taking their children to school, opening their businesses day after day, in the shade. The name of this place? Rjukan, a small town hidden in the Norwegian countryside, which seems frozen in time and plunged into darkness. For much of the fall and all winter, the sun disappears from view. No direct rays, no golden glow in the late afternoon. And the question remains, why does this happen? How is it possible to live so long away from sunlight? The answer is as surprising as the place itself. And you'll understand it all now, here in our Bello Mundo. Number 1. Location and geographical data. Rjukan is located in the south of Norway, about 170 kilometers from Oslo, the country's capital. But what really catches the eye here is not the distance to the big cities. It's the place where it was built. Nestled in a narrow valley, it is surrounded by giant mountains, including the imposing Gaustatoppen, the highest point in the region at 1,883 meters. Getting there is already part of the tour. The road winds its way through the forests, gradually gaining height, and the cold starts to set in even before you arrive. When you enter the valley, everything changes. Rocky walls surround the town, the sky seems more distant, and you feel like you're entering a place completely different from the rest of the world. Nature there is intense. In winter, it's an adventure lover's paradise. Snow-covered trails, ice climbing, and frozen landscapes everywhere. In summer, the scenery changes. The snow melts, the rivers gain strength, waterfalls appear at various points, and Lake Tinjo becomes an obligatory stop for those in search of tranquility and nature. It's an isolated place, yes, but with a kind of connection to the surrounding environment that you can't find just anywhere. But behind all this impressive scenery, there is a detail that completely changes the rhythm of life in the town. For much of the year, Rjukan goes through a long period of darkness. It takes more than 6 months to live in the shadows, and you'll soon understand how this is possible. Number 2. History. Now that you've understood a little about the geography of the region and its unique details, here's the question many people ask. Who came up with the idea of creating a city in a frozen valley, isolated and squeezed between mountains? The answer lies in the power of water. More precisely in the Rjukanfossen, a waterfall over 100 meters high, whose name in Norwegian means steaming waterfall. At the beginning of the 20th century, this impressive scenery caught the eye of an engineer and entrepreneur called Sam Ade. He realized that the waterfall could be used to generate energy and saw a rare chance to turn nature into progress. That's how Rjukan came to life. In 1905, Ade founded Norsk Hydro and decided to set up his fertilizer factories there, using the power of the waterfall to power the turbines. Soon workers, engineers, and entire families arrived, and with them, the town sprang up. But it wasn't just industry. The company itself was in charge of building everything the community would need: houses, schools, a hospital, and shops. An entire urban complex was born in the heart of the mountains. Over time, Rjukan came to play an important role in Norway's economy. The government got involved and started investing too, helping to expand the infrastructure. Today, much has changed. The machines have fallen silent, production has gone, but the past is still there. The old factories have been turned into museums, and traces of the industrial era can still be seen in every corner, in the little red bricks, in the preserved chimneys, and in the huge Vimork factory, which today opens its doors to anyone who wants to get a closer look at an important part of Norway's history. Number 3. A town that made history during the Second World War. It may seem strange to imagine that a small town tucked away in the mountains played a major role during the Second World War. But that's exactly what happened. Nearby, in Vemork, Norsk Hydro operated a plant that produced heavy water, a type of substance used in nuclear energy research. When the Nazis invaded Norway, they got their hands on this facility, and this sparked a warning. There was a real risk that Germany was trying to develop an atomic bomb. That's when one of the most daring sabotage missions of the war was born. A group of British-trained Norwegians infiltrated the region in the middle of winter, parachuting into hostile territory. They crossed glaciers, braved the extreme cold, and managed to infiltrate the factory to destroy the heavy water tanks. And yes, they succeeded. The operation worked and significantly delayed the Nazi regime's nuclear plans. This story became the subject of a book, a documentary, and even a movie. The Heroes of Telemark, released in 1965, is one of those productions that recount the feat. Number 4. Population, culture, and everyday life. Rjukan is a small town with just over 3,000 inhabitants, and it's precisely this size that gives it that village atmosphere where everyone knows each other, exchanges greetings in the street, and life runs in a quieter way, more connected to nature and the rhythm of the seasons. Daily life there changes a lot according to the weather. In the spring and summer months, residents make the most of the long, clear days. Mountain hikes, bike rides, river fishing, and outdoor picnics are all part of the routine. In the fall and winter, everything changes. The city becomes quieter, the streets gain a special charm from the snow, and activities such as skiing, skating, and snowboarding take over everyday life. Families gather at home, cozy cafes get busy, and that very Norwegian custom, the famous koselig, becomes almost a way of life. And for those who don't know, koselig is a Norwegian word that doesn't have an exact translation, but conveys the idea of something cozy, warm, and pleasant, both in places and in moments. It's that pleasant atmosphere of being at home, with candles burning, a blanket, a hot chocolate, surrounded by friends or family, enjoying simplicity. In other words, life is light, the sense of community is strong, and each season brings a new way of enjoying everyday life. Number 5. Gastronomy. When you talk about Norway, it's almost automatic to think of smoked salmon or cod dishes. But in Rjukan, things go a little differently. Because it's nestled in the mountainous interior, far from the coast, the city has developed its own habits when it comes to food. Of course, seafood is still present. We're talking about Norway after all. But it's not the protagonist here. On a daily basis, the most common dishes on the table are sturdy ones, the kind that help you cope with the region's intense cold. One of the classics is kjøttkaker, well-seasoned meatballs served with dark sauce, potatoes, and pea puree. Simple and tasty, it's a favorite among Norwegians. Another typical dish is fårikål, considered by many to be the country's national dish, a mutton stew with cabbage and black pepper that is the face of autumn. Now, if the subject is culinary controversy, lutefisk comes into play. It's dried cod that undergoes a process of hydration with caustic soda until it takes on a gelatinous texture. There are those who love it and those who shun it, but it's a tradition, especially at the holidays. In the constant cold, bread takes center stage. There, the custom is to eat black bread, dense and full of grains, which nourish and sustain for longer. And when the craving for something sweet strikes, there's nothing like a Norwegian waffle, very thin, heart-shaped, usually served with jam and sour cream. Another eye-catcher is brunost, Norway's famous brown cheese. Made from whey, it has a slightly sweet taste and a color reminiscent of caramel. As in all of Norway, coffee is sacred. In the long winter, it warms the soul, accompanied by homemade sweets and cookies. And of course, we can't forget aquavit, a traditional Scandinavian spirit, usually flavored with cumin and other spices. After a day braving the cold in the mountains, there's nothing better than feeling the warmth of a sip of aquavit to warm up your whole body. Number 6. A valley without sun, the months of darkness. Now it's time for the point that draws the most attention when it comes to Rjukan. From mid-September to the end of March, the city simply receives no direct sunlight. The sun even appears in the sky, but because of the giant mountains around it, it can't get over the slopes. The result? An entire valley plunged into shadow for almost half the year. During this period, there is light, but it's that cold, diffused light. No strong rays hitting your face, no warmth, no shadows cast on the ground. Sometimes, at certain angles, you can even see a beam or two trying to get through, but nothing that really illuminates the streets or warms the skin. And what's it like to live like this? For around 3,000 residents, the absence of sunlight has a direct effect on their routine. Spending months in the dark affects the body, mood, and even sleep. The lack of sunlight reduces the production of vitamin D, which is essential for good health. And along with it comes that unpleasant combo: constant tiredness, more sleep, and in many cases, a feeling of sadness that appears in winter, known as seasonal depression. The explanation lies in the way our biological clock works. It depends on light to keep hormones balanced. With less sunshine, melatonin, the sleepy kind, remains high, while serotonin, linked to a good mood, decreases. The result? More sluggishness, less disposition, and that famous winter melancholy, the so-called winter blues. Even so, Ryukans find a way to adapt, with lots of caffeine, special bright light bulbs, and good humor, while waiting for the triumphant return of the sun. And believe me, creativity in dealing with darkness goes back a long way in this city. Number 7. The incredible idea of giant mirrors. For a long time, the residents of Rjukan have been trying to find creative ways to get around the darkness that grips the city for much of the year. In 1928, for example, Norsk Hydro decided to sponsor the construction of a cable car, the Krossobanen. The idea was simple: to take residents to the top of the mountain where the sun could still reach. And it worked. Those who needed a bath of light would get on the cable car, spend some time up there, and return home refreshed. It was almost like a collective ritual. Imagine the scene: part of the city climbing the mountain just to see a bit of sunshine. It sounds strange, but it makes perfect sense up there. And this search for solutions didn't stop there. In 1913, long before any technology could do the job, a local official called Oscar Kittelsen had a daring idea: to install huge mirrors on the mountainside to reflect the sun's rays directly onto the city. But at the time, it was impossible to put the plan into practice. There was no structure to move such large mirrors according to the movement of the sun. The idea was shelved for almost a century, until in 2013, it went off the drawing board. Martin Anderson, an artist and resident of the city, brought the project back to life. With local support, he installed 3 giant mirrors, known as heliostats, on top of the mountain. They are computer-controlled, move automatically, and reflect sunlight to a specific point in the city, right in the center of the main square. The result? A circle of golden light measuring around 600 square meters in the middle of the darkness. Every day when the sun comes out, the mirrors do their job of illuminating that little piece of the city. It has become a meeting place. There are benches around, people drinking coffee, children playing, and old people warming their faces as if they were on the beach. The project was named Solspillet, which in Norwegian means Mirror of the Sun. It cost around 5 million Norwegian kroner, close to $780,000 at the time. At first, some people turned up their noses at the idea, thinking it was too expensive or pure tourist marketing, but it only took the first winter for the criticism to die down. The mirrors fell in love with the population, and not just for the light, but for the symbolism. For the first time, Rjukan could, even for a few hours a day, feel directly touched by the sun. Number 8. Tourism, adventures, and festivals. And to round off this trip on a high note, it's time to talk about one of the things everyone loves: sightseeing. It's true that the success of the mirrors has helped attract more visitors to Rjukan, but the city goes far beyond a selfie in the beam of light. There's plenty to explore there, especially if you like nature, history, and unusual experiences. One of the highlights is obviously the Krossebanen cable car, which we've talked about before. But apart from being able to see the sun in winter, the view from the top is surreal. You can see the whole valley, with Rjukan squeezed between the mountains, looking like a miniature hidden in the middle of nature. Another must-see is Gaustatoppen, the highest peak in the region, which we've already mentioned. During the summer, it's the perfect trail for those who like a rewarding hike. On clear days, you can see almost a sixth of Norway. In winter, the place becomes an off-piste ski slope, but only for those who have the technique and aren't scared by the wild terrain. History also has its place in the Norwegian Museum of Industry, housed in the old Vemork factory building. This is where the stories of Norsk hydro, heavy water production, and the famous sabotage of the Second World War are preserved. It's the kind of visit that mixes science, conflict, and a lot of courage. If you're looking for a thrill on ice, climbing the frozen waterfalls is one of the great attractions. Rjukan has become a world reference in this sport. More than 150 frozen waterfalls have been catalogued, challenging climbers from all over the world. For those who like real adventure, this is the place. And to complete the connection with nature, there's the Hardangervidda Plateau. One of the largest in Europe, it offers extensive trails, fishing areas, open fields, and even the chance to see wild reindeer in the wild. Throughout the year, Rjukan also hosts local festivals and events that mix tradition and modernity. Christmas markets, producers' meetings, winter activities, all with that Nordic touch that makes the experience more authentic and less hectic than in the bigger cities. And when the sun reappears after months of disappearing behind the mountains, the city celebrates. It's a symbolic party, but full of meaning. Residents gather together, some climb the hills, others just smile as the light returns. There's no stage or pyrotechnic show, but for those who have lived in the dark for so long, that moment is worth more than any spectacle. It's like welcoming the sun, for real. But now tell me, had you heard of Rjukan before? Which of these stories surprised you the most? The giant mirrors reflecting the sun, the movie-worthy sabotage, or the valley that stays in the shade for months on end? Tell us in the comments, because we love to know what caught your attention the most. Thank you for joining us on this trip, and see you on your next adventure in our Bello Mundo.